Welcome to Sales Bytes by Journey, where we talk about everything you need to know to be a killer at sales. I'm your host, Will Jenkins. Let's get it.
Today's episode is brought to you by Revinova. Revinova solves the transportation management challenges facing 3PLs, freight brokers, carriers, and shippers with multimodal TMS solutions powered by the #1 CRM platform, Salesforce.com. Serving the logistics industry since 2014, Revinova TMS customers benefit from increased sales velocity, improved service quality, higher employee productivity, and lower IT costs. Hello and welcome to Sales Bytes. My name is Will Jenkins, CEO and founder of Journey, and today I'm joined by Madison Santo, Growth at AVRL. Madison, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited as well. I actually had the opportunity to meet you. It's almost been 3 years, but a couple years back at a Freight Caviar happy hour in Chicago. It was like September of 23 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. That sounds about right. It's been a couple years.
Yeah, time flies. Crazy stuff. So, I'm excited to learn from you today. You got some great things that we'll talk through sales-wise. But before we get started, would you mind giving us just a 10,000 foot career overview? Doesn't have to be super in-depth, just a quick rundown of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been selling into the logistics industry for multiple years now. I started my career in sales selling in construction software. A friend of mine went into selling a carrier and shipper broker TMS. And I got recommended to start selling that. Didn't know anything about logistics or freight or trucking. So that was wild getting into it the first time and trying to understand freight and how the market worked. But I've been in that ever since. So been in the freight industry for about 6 or 7 years now, selling on the tech side. So, and then I got intro to AVRL. I guess 2 years back through a mutual connection, Brent Orsuka. Brent had recommended that I speak with Chad. He was like, hey, this company is doing amazing things. I think you should look into them. I was having a hard time in freight because a lot of the tech was very similar across the board. So I was having a hard time deciding where do I want to go? I'd like to stay in freight, but where do I want to go from there? Yeah. So he entered me into Chad, talked about AVRL, and been here ever since.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Madison. We're going to dive in with the topic of exhibiting emotional intelligence. Love this one. So we'll start at the top. What are some things that you would point out are important as people learn how to become more emotionally intelligent?
Yeah, I would say this is a piece when I thought about our talk today, I thought about what are the key characteristics of a salesperson that they would need to have in order for me to hire them. And exhibiting emotional intelligence is a big piece of that. And how people come across is a big piece of that. I would say there's some key points in this. Number one is not bending over backwards for your prospects. When you are selling into a prospect, the prospect is evaluating you, and you should be evaluating the prospect even more so. If you are not able to do that, then you are not going to be an effective seller. So I have a little bit of a story behind that and behind that reasoning. So I recently had a company who I was taking through the sales process. They were recommended to use us by somebody who had used AVRL. And we got to a point, we were still very early on in the sales process, and we got to a point and they said, hey, can you give me a referral? I'd like to speak to one of your customers. And I said, yes, I'm happy to give you a referral. Now, this would be a glowing referral. People who use AVRL are very, very happy with our technology, but we're not at that spot yet. I do not give up my customers' time easily. Referrals are always going to be one of the last steps that AVRL takes in the sales process in order to move forward with somebody. This prospect, normally when I tell prospects this, they respect that because I always push it back to, hey, if you became my customer, I would be doing the same thing for you. I would be securing and holding your time with such a high level that I would not want to give up your time easily at all. And that is how we treat our customers. Most of the time, again, prospects like that, this particular individual did not appreciate that at all. He kind of pushed back at me and said, hey, this is going to be a big piece in the evaluation process is, can you give me a referral? So at that point, I just said, I don't think we're going to align on this. I don't think that my thought process with me securing my customer's time and your thought process are really going to align. I would appreciate if you would put my technology up against our competitors' technology and push them side by side and look at them side by side and see what tech does your organization align better with. Come to find out, all the way to the end of the story, we did not bring that customer on. That customer decided to not go with AVRL. Now, one thing that shows me as a salesperson is that prospect was never we were never really a consideration. We were brought in because somebody else had said, hey, you should look at AVRL. So we were brought in because of that, but we were really never a consideration into their process. So one thing that I always tell salespeople is never to bend over backwards for a prospect. This is a give and a pull, and this is a hey, I do this for you, you do this for me. That goes all the way down into the negotiation tactics. If you're just bending over backwards in negotiation tactics, then your prospect now rules your entire sales process. Your prospect is owning you, and no seller should ever allow that to happen. So I would say that's a big piece that I think is hard for sellers to adopt is standing firm in your process as you have a push and a pull with the prospect.
Totally. How do you feel out the appropriate level of pushback if client opportunities are fruitful? I think there's an element of emotional challenges to that. So I'll just speak candidly. If I had a large multi-billion-dollar company I knew was going to bring me a ton of revenue, I'm probably going to do more for that opportunity than I would for a smaller opportunity that has less upside. But how hard I push is dictated upon the scale of the opportunity or what I think this opportunity could yield. So how do you advise people to work or kind of handle that?
I think with every organization, there's going to be ideologies that are never going to change. There are going to be things that I don't care if you're a multi-billion-dollar business that I would like to do business. I would like to have a contract with. These are things that we are not going to compromise. And then you're going to have pieces where you are going to compromise. This particular piece of not giving out my customers time is something I will not compromise. I don't care how large you are. I do not compromise my customers' time, no matter. And that should be something that we see eye to eye. If I don't see eye to eye with my prospect in that way, then I don't think we would be a good fit. And I don't think we would be good partners at that point if we cannot see eye to eye. So I think with every organization, you have to make that decision. And you also have to see how much previously in all of our conversations, how much do me and this company align? How much does my company and this company align? Yeah. And maybe I'm going to give a little bit here and there. But for me, that's what it comes down to more than anything is size will play a part of that, but it's going to be alignment for me.
Makes sense. What are some other elements of emotional intelligence that you think are important for reps to understand as they begin to develop?
Yeah, I would say another piece. For this one, I really had some specific sales examples to give. So
Yeah.
Another example and another story to give around this is that a prospect asked me to complete an RFP. This RFP had a checkbox that said, do you have a direct integration with this TMS? Now, this TMS did not expose APIs. Therefore, you could not have a direct integration with this TMS. I called up the person and I said, hey, I see this checkbox here. I just want to let you know that this TMS doesn't expose APIs. Therefore, I will not be checking this off. And anyone who does check this off is lying to you because that's not true. This prospect ended up calling up their TMS, finding out that that was true, and then saw multiple lies along the way. So I think a big thing is being very straightforward with your prospects in what are you really good at? What are you not really good at? What do you do? What are you not able to do across the sales process? I think a lot of tech vendors today will lie to you and say, yeah, we can do that. Yes, we can do that. And it might be, pushing the boundaries a little bit on what they can do. But when it comes down to it and you come to implement it and you find that they can't do it, that happens often. I have had a lot of people come to me and say, I was promised this from this tech vendor and it never came to fruition. They said they had this integration. They said that they could do all of these things, and that never came to fruition. I think a big piece of selling with emotional intelligence is being overly upfront with your prospects. Yes, change management is super hard. What's the hardest thing about tech? Change management. It is going to be difficult. Yes, you are going to have to do some restructuring. Yes, your people are going to be moved around into different spots. No, your people are not going to like that. People ask me all the time, like, hey, do you get pushback from internal team members? Every time. There is not a company that we bring onto AVRL that we do not get pushback from internal members, because change management is a big piece. I would say that that is something a lot of sellers fail in, is not being overly upfront about what does your tech provider do versus what they don't do. And that really muddies the water, because as you know, Will, we have so many tech providers in logistics. Dozens and dozens and dozens. So it really begins to muddy the waters, and it gives a lot of bad names. But I would say that's another big piece that I've seen a lot of sellers really struggle in.
Yeah, I think people, for the most part, have a hard time being transparent, because oftentimes they were not necessarily taught how to do that just in regular communication or just like in regular relationships. And most customers love that. They love it when you tell them exactly what you can do and exactly what you can't, because it's easier for them to evaluate you on those things, and there's not gray area. If there's one thing I think has helped me as I've progressed as a sales professional, I'm a straight shooter. Here's what we can do. Here's what we cannot do. If that disqualifies me, not a big deal. We appreciate the opportunity, right? But let's not waste each other's time.
Yep. I would very much so agree. Will, I have a question for you. So I have sold into the tech side of logistics now solely. That is all I've done. I've sold tech. You have sold recruiting. You have sold technology. You've sold loads before. What do you think if a seller is trying to make a jump from either, hey, I've been a broker and now I want to sell tech, or I've been a broker and I want to sell recruitment, or I've been selling tech and I want to move to recruitment? What kind of differences do you think that a seller needs? What kind of hurdles do you think that they're going to come across? I think that would be good for people to hear as well.
I think that the major difference between, actually, I'll kind of step to this organization by organization. So selling freight is, if you're on the carrier side, transactional or contractual, and the style of sale is very different. If I'm selling a spot load today that I post that needs to go, the tone and level of intensity necessary to make sure we cover that in the time frame we have is different than if I'm trying to sell 3 shipments a day every day to a carrier that will run it dedicated, very much longer process. So a little bit of nuance there with how you approach the sale and how you walk through it. Some things will be fundamental regardless. Helpful to know the space, helpful to know your buyer, helpful to know what challenges they have, why they may say no, what things won't work. That is constant, regardless of if it's transactional or a long-term sale or industry. If you are trying to relate, I understand freight, and now I want to go sell freight tech, the most important difference there is you have a new target buyer. So in freight, you're selling to, at least in our space, you're selling to a carrier or a driver that needs a shipment, or you're talking to a company that moves freight, you talk to a shipper. If you leave and go and sell freight tech, you're now talking to typically owners, C-suite executives, VPs that are in the seat you were in, and they have a different set of criteria they use to evaluate vendors and different motivations for how they choose to purchase. The biggest difference I see that hurts when someone leaves brokerage and goes and sells freight tech is that they're not yet privy to the nuances of selling to a high level decision maker that is evaluating multiple things that may impact their business negatively. Here's an example, a TMS implementation, or having any type of outside tech come in and now, unseat an incumbent is a massive operational risk. If you've never walked someone through how to do that properly, you're not going to start the sale at the right place to then help them feel comfortable that you can take them through that life cycle. So oftentimes it's really hard for a brokerage seller to go sell freight tech until they understand how to talk to their target buyer. And then on the recruiting or consulting side of our business, they're very similar to some of what you do in freight. Like I've recruited for a very long time. Agency recruiting is different because you have a lot of people you represent. So you have to have a higher level of understanding of differences between different clients and differences between different candidates to make sure you put them in the right position to succeed. So it takes a specific skill set to go, okay, Madison is a fit for this company, but she may not be a fit for that company. And it's not because she's not a strong candidate. It's because I understand the company and I understand Madison. It's just it's all nuance, but generally speaking, there are some parts that don't translate well. They take a little bit of time to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. I think that a lot of people who are brokers eventually want to step into roles, maybe being in tech or being in recruiting or selling different things. And I think that that's really helpful for people to understand hurdles, different persona buyers, things like that to get them there.
It's huge. I think if I could tell a younger version of myself something to learn more sooner, it is truly how to put yourself in the seat of your buyer. Let's just dismiss organization. Let's dismiss like the product. Let's just say it's sales and I am a sales professional selling to a target market. You got to put yourself in their seat. Why would they or why wouldn't they buy? Are they working through some challenges and how do you start to become comfortable with understanding those? And the closer you get to understanding your buyer, the easier it is for you to convey what you do and why it would be valuable for them. And that's something that I wish I would have learned way sooner because it helps to connect with your buyer so much more.
Yeah, that's great. That's really, really good advice. I really like that. I think that is helpful for 100% of sellers across the board, including myself.
Well, you've been dropping heat this whole time, so I'm trying to make sure I contribute a little bit. It's good. So as we get ready to wrap up here, I love talking about emotional intelligence. Anything else to add? A couple of notes that I wrote down. Not bending over backwards, right? Like understanding the situation and what is warranted, kind of where you draw the boundaries there with the people that you're selling to. It's a two-way street, right? Give and take. They've got to be engaged in that process, and then being transparent, really authentic with people about what's going on makes it easier for them to evaluate. But anything else to add there before we wrap?
Yeah, I think those are probably the two key pieces when I am coaching a salesperson or helping a salesperson along their journey, to be able to think clearly throughout the sales process and really understand, is this person being serious or are they not? And there's a lot of key things and key points you can make through the sales process to really understand how serious is this buyer and are they spinning your wheels, and you should be protecting your time above everything, which protects the prospect's time inadvertently. So
time's the most valuable asset we got. We're not getting more of it. So very important to guard it. Very, very important. Madison, this is incredible. I really appreciate you taking some time to walk us through some sales bites. Thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Will.
Awesome.